Okay, good morning, everybody. It is September 18th, 2025, and want to say thank you as always to the new subscribers and hope everyone will like and subscribe to this video. And by the way, I'm at 349. I need one more subscriber to get me 350. So if one brave soul would please click the subscribe button, I would greatly appreciate it. Okay, on to the main video topic of today. This is going to be the first of a two-part series on what I consider to be one of the critical founding myths of MAGA. The myth is that the United States is the perpetual sucker country. Everyone takes advantage of us. Everyone, runs roughshod over us. We lose all the wars. We get killed on all the trade deals. And if you go back to Trump's campaign, especially in 2015 and 2016, although he's certainly continued that even up until now, he's constantly talking about, our leaders are stupid, our leaders are foolish, and we get taken advantage of, and we get ripped off, and we're just a victim. I mean, the United States of America is just such a victim of all these other countries, Japan and Canada and the EU and China, and just everybody is just victimizing the U.S. This is actually very consistent with Trump's ideology. Psychology. If you listen to how Trump talks about himself, he constantly portrays himself as the victim. This is a witch hunt. That's a witch hunt. This is rigged. That's rigged. This is unfair. He's treated very badly by this. Now, sometimes, by the way, he is right about that. There are some very unfair things that have been done to him. He has at times been treated very badly when he didn't deserve it. He's not completely without merit on that, but he also does it constantly, even when there's absolutely no reason for it. Now, keep in mind, Trump is a lifelong Democrat. He spent most of his life in a very liberal city, New York. He himself was a Democrat for decades. He has that mindset. Him becoming a Republican is a very recent thing. But, if you were on the left, victimhood is a badge of honor. I was oppressed by this. I'm oppressed by that. Therefore, I'm important. I have greater moral worth. That kind of thing. Trump really takes that to the nth degree. And he portrays the United States, who in my opinion he sees as just an extension of himself, in the same way that the United States is just the perpetual victim. And everybody takes advantage of us, and is only by him being smart and cunning and art of the deal and all this other stuff that we will ever get out of that. So I thought, let's take an examination. And by the way, this really is a founding myth of MAGA, because a lot of the way that MAGA was able to gain purchase amongst the working class was the idea that you are taken advantage of as well. The evil globalists, the evil capitalists, the military-industrial complex. Remember, military-industrial complex used to be a term really only used by the left, and now it's all over the MAGA right. They're all taking advantage of you, that sort of thing. So, part one of this, we're going to look at it from a security defense perspective. Part two, I'm going to look at it from an economic trade perspective. So, for this video, let's start with security and defense. So, the idea that the United States is a sucker country and everyone just runs roughshod over us, and we just lose and lose and lose, and so much losing, and oh my God, we just lose. We suck. And then we're a punching bag. Okay, so let's go back, maybe 100 years or so, and let's work our way forward from there. Let's start with the Kaiser. In early 1917, he makes a decision to authorize Ludendorff's desire for an unrestricted submarine warfare campaign against shipping around the British Isles, which they absolutely knew and counted on would bring the United States into the war against Germany. And the idea was, they thought, don't worry, we'll have the war won before the United States can get here. And they didn't really think the United States had much stomach for a fight anyway. A year and a half later, the German army is broken. The Kaiser is going into exile. He has lost his country. Hundreds of thousands of German soldiers are dead. There's 2 million American soldiers on the European continent. It is a complete disaster and a complete failure. Germany is starving. Their economy is broken. Now, I'm not saying this was solely and exclusively the result of the United States. Far from it. Obviously, the French, the British, the Russians all played very, very large roles in this. But the point is, they counted on the idea that they could win the war before the Americans got involved, and that even if the Americans did get involved, it wouldn't be that big of a problem anyway. Within a year and a half, there's literally German soldiers, or I should say German positions, are getting overrun almost every day by American forces. The Americans brought so much artillery ammunition that the concern was, why do we need to bring more ammunition? All the gun barrels are going to wear out before we can even fire at all. And if you go into some of the first-hand accounts of German soldiers, it was like, oh my God, these Americans, there's so many of them. They talk about how big they were. Americans were big. Like physically, like an American soldier was just a big guy. They have so much ammo. That was the other thing. It's just their guns just fire and fire and fire and fire, and they just never run out of ammo. So safe to say that the Kaiser tried to play the America as a sucker card and did not work out well. Okay, let's fast forward a little bit here to World War II. The Japanese have this really cool idea. They're going to bomb Pearl Harbor. They're going to knock the United States out of the Pacific, and they're going to create what they call the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Field. co-prosperity sphere. Very nice name for the idea that you're all going to be our imperial slaves now. By the way, you can always tell dictators are up to something bad because they come up with the most beautiful, wonderful sounding names imaginable and slap it on just absolute atrocity. So they bomb Pearl Harbor. They win a bunch of battles after that. Things go well. 6 months later, they have the Battle of Midway. The Americans sink 3 of their carriers. And after that, things kind of start going downhill for Japan. By 1945, the United States has destroyed the Japanese Navy. It has destroyed the Japanese merchant fleet. And there is a mass famine going on in Japan. A general by the name of Curtis LeMay takes over Bomber Command in early 1945 and begins a firebombing campaign on the now surrounded and starving island of Japan. He burns down 67 Japanese cities. By summer of that year, he was saying, guys, I really can't keep this campaign up past October because there's just not going to be enough targets left at that point. I'm not kidding. So fast forward to August, the United States has developed a way to ignite a miniature portable sun. And we dropped 2 of those, one in Hiroshima and another in Nagasaki. After that, the Japanese leadership council gets together and decides that maybe this war isn't an awesome idea anymore and they need to surrender. And they do, thank God. So realize, by the way, the firebombing only happened after the famine, and the nukes were only dropped after the firebombing. So needless to say, does not go well for Japan. Obviously, Italy enters the war against the United States. The Americans, certainly along with a lot of, I should say really the British do most of the heavy lifting in North Africa, but the Americans play their part. But they're kicked out of North Africa. They lose Sicily. The Americans end up, along with the British, end up overrunning nearly all of Italy. And by, I think it was actually 1944, Mussolini's own people revolt against them and they hang him. So it does not end up well for Mussolini. And then, of course, that brings us to our old buddy Adolf Hitler, who declares war on the United States, even though he absolutely did not need to. He does it a couple of days after Pearl Harbor in an act of incredible stupidity. That'd be December 1941. By late April of 1945, so 3.5 years later, Germany is a smoldering ruin. The United States controls large chunks of the country, and obviously the British are there, the Russians are there, and I know the Russians do a lot of the fighting. They do the most of the fighting. Hitler is dead. His wife is dead. Several members of his inner circle are dead. The rest are going to go to Nuremberg, where they will be tried, and several of them will be executed. Germany is partitioned. It is divided up and will not be reunited until the 1990s. So needless to say, that did not work out well. So again, we've now been through several examples of, hey, we're going to take on the Americans, and it's just not going well. Korean War. Now this would be the one where the people say, ha ha, the Korean War. The United States doesn't win that one. Did we? The North Korean army starts the war. The North Korean army is obliterated by the American forces during the war. The American forces take Pyongyang and they push all the way north to the Yalu River, which is way in the north of the country. The United States had basically overrun North Korea at this point. The Chinese army is who pushes the Americans back. After that, you see sort of a seesaw. The Chinese will push back, the Americans will push the Chinese back. They go back and forth a little bit. And then finally, they stalemate. There's a lot of fighting, and neither side can really get the advantage. The Chinese are suffering much heavier losses than the Americans are, but the Americans are kind of like, look, we were here to save South Korea. We've saved South Korea. We've obliterated the North Korean army. Do we really need to continue this war in China? And also, we do not want to invade China. China is massive. That's not the direction we wanted to go, very wisely, I might add. And so we end up signing an armistice, essentially a ceasefire that is still in effect to this day. South Korea becomes a democratic country. They become a huge trade partner, a huge defense partner. Yeah, I actually think the United States wins that one. But the main thing to remember is the country that started that war, North Korea, they are overrun by the Americans, and their army is obliterated. Yes, the North Korean state exists to this day. China can legitimately say, we fought the United States to a draw. The North Koreans cannot. They were wiped out. Let's take a couple other examples. Manuel Noriega used to be a friend of the Americans. We even had him on the payroll. Pissed us off too much. Ends up spending we send the freaking army after him in Panama, take over his country, arrest him. He spends 17 years in a jail in Florida. Then he goes spend some time in jail in France. Then goes back to a jail in Panama where he finally dies. Ended badly for him. Let's look at Saddam Hussein. Well, first we have the Gulf War where his army gets crushed. Then we have the second war where we invade, overrun the whole country, and it ends with his sons being killed, his grandson being killed, and him hanging at the end of a rope. Not a great ending if you're Saddam Hussein. You may remember, and during the height of the insurgency in Iraq, there was a leader, Zarqawi. Sorry, I'm really bad at pronouncing foreign names. I apologize. Um, he was the big leader of the insurgency, and he was the big hero for all the Islamists and all that kind of stuff. He was hit by an American guided missile and died on a stretcher while being carried out by American infantrymen. He actually woke up for a second and tried to get off the stretcher and tried to get away, but he was so weak from his wounds he wasn't able to. So he died knowing he was in American custody. Um, and of course, there is our one of history's biggest, Osama bin Laden. No one stuck a thumb in the eye of the United States quite like Osama bin Laden did. Nearly his entire inner circle has been killed or captured since then, and Osama himself ended up getting several rounds of 5.56 put into him by SEAL Team 6. So it did not end well for him. He basically had to live in de facto captivity for years prior to that. And obviously, so the rank and file of his Al-Qaeda was basically all annihilated. Now, I know there are other people who have come along and said, no, now we're Al-Qaeda, but the group that bin Laden led, they're all dead. So again, did not end out well for them. Vladimir Putin tested the United States with his invasion of Ukraine in 2022. He thought absolutely, after the debacle that was the American Afghanistan withdrawal, that the United States was not going to do anything. Well, it turns out the United States did do something. Turns out Europe did something. We both did quite a bit. And it turns out that things like American MLRS's multiple launch rocket system, you make HIMARS, and 155 millimeter Paladin guns, were so effective that the Russians could no longer bring ammo to the front, could no longer have ammunition depots near the front line, because they were able, the Americans through satellite targeting were able to give the Ukrainians real-time updates, and they literally blew up all the ammo depots. This was in summer of 2022, and this is why the war in the Donbass ground to a halt there. The other thing was, during that same spring and summer, you may remember, every time you turned around, another Russian general was being killed or another colonel was being killed. That was because the American intelligence was literally listening in on radio and phone messages from Russian commanders, getting real-time updates and providing the targeting to the Ukrainians up and down the kill chain and saying, okay, hit this target now, hit this target now. And several Russian generals were killed along with their command staffs. Obviously, the war has gone extremely badly for Russia. By the way, the United States kicked Russia out of the international banking system in a day. You may remember that being kicked out of the SWIFT banking system. We literally cut Russia off from international finance like that. So, now, you want to argue Vietnam, knock yourself out, go for it. Point is, does that sound like a sucker country to you? Does that sound like a country who anyone who wants to, they can mess with us, they can do anything they want, blah, blah, blah. I'm probably leaving out 20 other examples I should include, but the video's already gone on long enough. Is America a sucker country? Ask Saddam Hussein, ask the Kaiser, ask Adolf Hitler, ask Mussolini, ask the Japanese, ask the North Korean army, ask the Iraqi army, ask Osama bin Laden, ask Noriega. They're all dead. They all were either killed or captured. Most of them were killed. Many of them by the United States. By the way, Admiral Yamamoto, the famous Japanese admiral, killed by the United States. We shot down his plane. Intelligence cracked the code. They knew where he was. Flew in, blew up his plane. Killed him and his command staff, by the way. So yeah, on a military defense, I'm not buying it.